6620. We are talking to Dr. Larry Hunter. He's the president of the Alliance for Retirement Prosperity. And Larry, I apologize for getting on a rant there, but this is just so crazy. The fact that, Robert Byrd, as well as a few Republicans over the last few years, they get this extra year's salary after they die. Now, I don't know of any job that does that. Okay, if I were to die tomorrow, I have life insurance through my company, I have a retirement plan through my company, and my heirs would get all of that. But Robert Byrd had all of that already. In fact, he was vested before 1989, which was the golden era of these multi-million-dollar pensions that senators got.
Well, you're exactly right. It can be summed up in a few words. Senators get death benefits, taxpayers get death taxes.
Right.
It's outrageous, and it's just another indication of how our democracy has turned into government of the politicians, by the politicians, and for the politicians. Turned Abraham Lincoln's notion on its head, and I think that in large part, accounts for the outrage you're feeling boiling up from the grassroots now. People are just tired of the bureaucrats and the politicians walking all over them. And this economic recession, near depression, as one of your earlier callers indicated, is crushing people, and I don't think people are going to be willing to take it much longer.
Well, and here's what bothers me is that, my husband and I took a huge hit in 2008 regarding our retirement plan. And maybe we could have managed it better. There's a lot of questions. We've made back some of that money. But, a lot of people say, well, you've made back as much money. But if you lose 50% and then it increases by 50%, you're still down 25%. Okay, that's what you have to look at. And now I can tell that if we don't make a change in Washington, they're eyeing that money to try to get their hands on that money that we have worked very hard to save. We took risk, we won some, we lost some, and that bothers me that now they're going to be looking at that money as a way to get their hands on that.
Well, the politicians are never satisfied, and they will continue grasping and grabbing until someone hits them upside the head and makes them stop. It has gotten out of control, and harking back to what one of your earlier callers said, I think it was a very good point, and I would just like to reiterate it. The Republican Party really needs to stop talking about the Bush tax cuts. That's ancient history. That's as much history as the Reagan tax cuts and the Kennedy tax cuts. What we're talking about now is whether we're going to raise taxes. And at the Alliance for Retirement Prosperity, we've put out a call, and it's been aimed primarily at Republicans to try to get them to articulate clearly what they will and won't do. It's time to stop talking about restoring the tax cuts. What we're doing, what we're facing is a tax increase, and we should stop it. But then we should go one step further, and we should ask, what would Jack Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, or Jack Kemp have done in this situation? It's very clear. They not only would not raise taxes, they would cut tax rates across the board. And then what Congress needs to do is they need to put a stop to government spending. They need to roll government spending back to 2008 levels. And again, at the Alliance for Retirement Prosperity, we've called for a very simple approach. We have a compact with seniors. We cannot cut them off. They've worked their whole lives. They've contributed to support earlier generations of retirees. So there should be no cuts to Medicare and Social Security. But then they should cut the rest of the budget sufficient to get it back to the total budget back to 2008. That would take a 25% across-the-board tax cuts, lay off federal workers, lay off federal contractors, cut the rest of the budget across the board by 25%. We're doing it in Virginia. They're doing it in New Jersey. And people like you have done it in their private budgets all along. It's time to get government under control again.
So what's your website so people can know more about what Alliance for Retirement Prosperity is?
WeTheAlliance.com. It's a conservative alternative to AARP. I think when people go there, they will be amazed. The discounts are better. choice of products is better, lower prices, and we profess a conservative philosophy. But we're an equal opportunity critic of government. Believe you me, we're not partisan. We're not wholly owned subsidiaries of any party. We believe the politicians of both parties have got to be gotten under control.
Well, and see, and people say, oh, well, it'll only be however many seats will change hands. You know, some people say 40, some people say 80. You know, who knows what it'll be. But the bottom line is, and while it may only be 10 to 20%, if we can turn over, we really should be turning over the House and the Senate at 10 to 20% every cycle. If you do that, then nobody gets complacent. Nobody starts acting like it's theirs, you know, this is my seat, the way Robert Byrd did. And you know, no, God rest in peace, you know, no offense to him, but he thought he was owed this. And that's not what public service should be. And that's what we need to push for. And I think this is a 6-year cycle, and we cannot take our eye off the ball for one single minute. And I think that that's what we're going to try to do here.
Well, you know, I've always advocated just voting against incumbents. And if you do that enough, it's like thinning out the herd. They pretty soon get the message.
That's right.
And, you know, we put Republicans in power once before, and this is not to say we shouldn't put Republicans or Democrats in power. The fact of the matter is, once politicians get into power, they are no longer your friend.
And that's right. We've got to hold their feet to the fire. Dr. Larry Hunter, WeTheAlliance.com. Lots more to come on the Martha Zoller Show.